Welcome to Women in Leadership Talk, where you'll hear from successful women who are empowering other women with their stories of adversity, resiliency, and success. And here is your host, Vicki Bradley, founder and CEO of Women in Leadership Empowered.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. We are bringing you another amazing guest to talk to today. We're going to be talking about firing up innovation. And I'm thrilled to have Helene Cahen joining me today from California. Helene, thanks so much for being here.
Hi, Vicki. Thank you so much for inviting me on your podcast.
Well, it's our pleasure to host you. Yeah, it's wonderful to have you here. And audience, we may have a little bit of a delay, so bear with us as the audio catches up because we've decided we both like to talk and we've got lots to share with you today. So just be ready for an eventful and inspiring conversation. And audience, I want to take a moment and thank you for joining in. We know you have a choice, so thanks so much for being here today. Please be sure to leave us a review. That's what keeps us going. That's what keeps bringing wonderful guests into your inbox. So make sure you leave us a review. Let us know what you think of the conversation. So let me give you a little bit of insight to Helene so that you know why I've invited her to speak with me today and you know why I wanted our audience to hear her story and what she's up to. So Helene is the author of Fire Up Innovations, which is her new book. She's all about sparking and sustaining innovation in teams. She's an innovation strategist. She has been a speaker for over 20 years and has experience helping companies navigate these innovation challenges. And this is like perfect time, Helene, for us to be talking because there are so many challenges and so much uncertainty. So timing couldn't be better. She's also the founder and principal consultant at Fire Up Innovations, which was previously known as Strategic Insights. She guides Fortune 500 companies, small businesses, not-for-profits, and helping them understand and create meaningful change through innovation. Helene, let's jump in and just talk a little bit about, this new book that you've created. Like, what was the inspiration that prompted you to write Fire Up Innovation?
So I've been in this field for over 20 years, and that was a book I couldn't find, which is a book. There's a lot of tool books. There's a lot of academic books, but there is not an in-between. So I wanted to bring the knowledge. I have a MS in creativity and change leadership. So I wanted to bring the framework and the deep understanding of creativity and innovation, and yet making a very practical book because you can talk to innovation to death. It's not really helpful. So my book has tips and examples, and also each chapter has a practice. So if you want to learn, you can take the practices and then reflect on them. And that's really a lot of the learning is from this. So I wanted to give people a chance to have kind of a whole innovation experience rather than a piece. So 100 tools, what do you do with them? If you don't have a context, it doesn't help.
Well, that's a great point that you bring up. And when you think about, you know, who would be the audience that you would want to influence and who should be reading this to help them with just how they manage change even?
So exactly, I was going to say the closer target is people that are working in innovation team, innovation projects, but the broader target is change, and we are all going through change. And there's different mindset dealing with ambiguity and not knowing and fear of failing. And so a book like that can give you some feeling more comfortable with it, also helping you with having tools. Sometimes instead of being stuck, how do you get unstuck? You can use some other tool. I voluntarily didn't make it a big tool book, so there might be like 10 tools. That's actually what I use mostly. I know 100 of tools, but there's 5 to 10 that can really get you off and unstuck. So I'm hoping that could be of help. And you can use it for business. The focus is business, but a lot of those can be applied to. There's an example in the book about how do you plan a family trip with a lot of variables, and that can be challenging and have a lot of family dynamics, which is not that different than team dynamics in innovation. It can also be for if you're curious, which is a trait of creative people, innovating people, that could be a book for you. And also, if you're a visual thinker, because I don't like books with just word, and I'm a visual thinker, a lot about that. So there's a lot of graphics and colors, and every chapter is color coded to correspond to something different. So if that's something that's appealed to you, check it out.
Amazing. Well, and I love that. I love how you also related it to, it's not just a business book, even though that's your primary audience, but change is scary, right? I mean, even if you have like a kid in your home who's going off to university, that's a big change, not just for the parents, but also for any siblings. So you're looking at this holistically, but primarily a business book, right?
Yes. But I just became an empty nester last fall, so I can relate to major change in your life
Okay.
and how you have to deal with it and how to use creativity. It's like, okay, so what is my life? What do I want to do? What might be all the new things I do, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow, and I didn't know that. That's a good way to segue into, some of those challenges, whether you're a leader facing challenges or if it's at home, like really thinking about how that pertains. I guess let's focus on leadership right now and in a business perspective. Like everything we're facing today, how does innovation impact those changes and
So
challenges?
the thing with innovation, it's ultimately, as we talked earlier, about change. And so change means you don't know the answer. You might fail. It's not business as usual, which means whatever you have already in place, probably not going to work. Ultimately, being in a change environment is using a different mindset. So what makes you really good at doing a business that you've been working on for many years is actually going to be challenging to you because you don't know. Because it will be nice to have a nice, clear funnel process, for example. But you know what? Innovation is ups and down and around, and then you go somewhere and you get a dead end and you have to go back. We have new ideas. We test them with our consumer, didn't work. Well, should we get more ideas? Are we actually solving the wrong problem? So being kind of flexible about that and comfortable and knowing that up and down and failure is actually part of it. And that's one thing we don't talk about. We talk about, okay, this is our outcome, this is a success, but we don't include, okay, failure and how do we integrate them and how we learn from them and how we think about it's not. And there's a way to manage failure so it's not too costly and too timely. So that's why I really believe in early prototyping. And it didn't work, but we learned something. So it's actually a learning experience. But how do you build it upfront in the project with your team? So there is not expectation that if something doesn't go well, then we just have to hide it or pretend it didn't happen or it's a drama. It's the opposite, especially when you're trying to big change. And right now, for example, with AI, there's so much change that organization trying something didn't work, try something else didn't work. And if we know that upfront and accept it, it will be much better than if we like, oh, no, it didn't work. This is awful. It was like, it should be part of the charter that they were part of it. And you can argue that if you don't fail enough early, then you're not doing something right.
Well, you said a number of things there. So my head is like, which question do I want to go with here? No, so much good information. So we do have a society that is focused on no failure, right? But to your point, there's so much learning and so much creative and innovation that happens from failure. So even if we look at Thomas Edison, right? Like, look how many things that he created because he failed, like trying to create the light bulb, right? But I mean, created thousands of innovation. So how do we overcome that? Like you talked a little bit about mindset, but how do we start to overcome that one, the fear of failure, but also embracing that as learning and opportunity and possibility of what can come from what you're going through?
I think if you build it up front and you set up expectation, like if you're a manager having a team, you can set up an expectation and saying, yeah, in 9 months from now, we want to be there, but we know it's not going to be nice and pretty and linear. And we also, if we acknowledge failure and actually celebrate failure, and then you, on the other hand, you put criteria. So you don't want the project to go for 9 months without testing and checking and things like that. And then you spend a lot of time and money in it. So it will be like, and I can challenge, anything can be prototype very early. It can be a drawing, it can be a skit. As with AI, you can get an image in 2 minutes, literally. You can get a video in 10 and have those and get feedback. Because we can be in our head, we can be in our silos, we can believe this is great, but at the end of the day, somebody is going to be using whatever you're changing. Or somebody will be, if it's changing the structure of your team, somebody is going to be impacted by that structure. So unless you get ongoing feedback and getting is like, are we going in the right direction? Is it getting to what we need? And if we're not, let's pivot or change or navigate that. So I think it's really important to have it up front and knowing that this is just part of getting to the outcome, rather than, oh, it's a surprise, we were not expecting that.
Yeah. Well, and just given what you said, it reminds me of like, if you're testing up front, it gives you the opportunity to test, are we actually solving for the right problem?
Exactly.
Right? Because as you start to innovate, you may go, oh, that's actually not what the problem is. And it helps you rejig things very quickly. But something else you said, and I think it's a very important message for our audience listening in, is what got you here, where you are today, is not going to get you where you're going.
Exactly.
And so innovation is huge and maybe let's talk about innovation in a more broad term. Like, what are the different ways that you would view innovation?
Well, I think, there is the innovation with a big I and a small I. Sometimes there's this distinction. Innovation to create a whole, there's also the idea of a totally new space. Blue ocean strategy was popular a while back. It's the idea you're going somewhere that was not there. So before there was Uber and Lyft, there was nothing in that area. That's big innovation. And then there is the everyday innovation, which actually a lot of it is happening because with AI, whatever we used to do before, the outcome for the customer might be the same or might be different, but how you do it internally, that's going to be different. And that's innovation too. And so innovation that's why I like to ultimately it's about change. So if you do something that you've been doing for 10 years or 2 years or whatever, and everything's the same, that's fine. You know how to do it. But when you have to change something, then you have to have nothing else an innovation mindset and knowing that it's not the same process and approach and necessarily roadmap. And one of the things that's really important is what is the culture of the organization that's going to support it? Because unless the first time you come with a failure and something bad happened, you kill innovation. So sometimes you have message that innovation is a buzzword these days. We want to be innovative, etc. But what happened when you go to management with new ideas and they're like, can't do it. We tried it before. We don't have the time. We don't have the money. Rather than, this is interesting. We're not sure. Maybe we give you a little bit more time or money, or we ask you to test and provide something. So it's really also, if the culture is supportive, then it's much easier. If the culture is not supportive and it's just it's just paying lip service to it, then innovation is going to be ultimately fail because of that.
Okay. So those are some good examples of innovation. And what about innovation from the perspective of new partnerships or channels of distribution?
So yes. So one of the things I do is I coach at the Haas School of Business, and I coach a tool called the Business Model Canvas. And the Business Model Canvas look at different aspects of your business. And one of the things we discuss is innovation can be everywhere. So we think about innovation being new product and services, but innovation can be anywhere from a new customer segment could be innovative. To your point, new partners can be innovative. New way that you touch point with your customers, communication can be innovative. Or your pricing model can be innovative. Or you're partnering with other internal groups or external partners. So yeah, an innovation can be on all of those. And that's often not talked about. We focus on product and services, but all of these aspects can be as innovative, sometimes if not more innovative.
Okay. I think those are great examples because so when you were just saying that, like my mind goes to product and service, right? And innovation is so much more broad than that. And how does that, like if you're, seeing new partnerships, or what's the word I'm looking for?
New channels, maybe?
Yeah, new channels of distribution. Like, how do you ensure that sustainability?
Once again, my universal answers is check it out, test it, get feedback, see if it works, if it's a good idea. No, so don't just do the whole thing. Just, if you have a new distribution, try it for one of your product or a small amount of consumers. Let's say you're doing direct to consumers and you want to boost that. You can test it and see, is that working or not? Is that a message that would work? Change all your website, but having maybe a few pages, and you try have 50, I don't know, if you have a database, send it to 1,000 customers and see if anybody's interested in it or something like that. So yeah, start small, or if you go with a new type of retailer, try with 1 store or 5 stores or regional test, and then decide if that works or not. So it's always test, iterate, and get feedback, and then build from that.
Okay, nice, nice. So as you were saying that, it took me back in time when one retail organization I worked in, I remember coming in and we were implementing something, and people who had been around for a long time were like, "Oh, we've done that. Doesn't work." And that's a very normal, I'm sure you hear that too, right? Or, so what are some strategies that you've used to help overcome that? Because that's a bit of a mindset, right? Like, been there, done that, don't need to do it again. But sometimes it's timing, right? What would be some tips that you would share on how to overcome those stories?
So there's a couple of things. The first basic concept, it's called the dynamic balance of creativity. So when you create something new, you have to do two things. You have to diverge, which is look at a lot of options, and then converge, which is select and decide. And the trick is not doing it at the same time. So in that meeting, when somebody come up with an idea, and the first thing is we tried it before, just say, well, we might suspend judgment. It might be for 5 minutes. It might be for 3 hours. It might, let's give this thing 2 months to test, but have a time when you can actually, because those ideas are usually just a seed of something, and you don't know how it's going to go unless you give him a chance. And then vice versa, when you have thousands of ideas, which sometimes happen. We did that brainstorming session. We have thousands of ideas with AI. It's really easy. How do you decide and how you make decision? And what's the process and what the criteria, and like be very clear. And those discussions need to happen and spend a lot of time. And sometimes we also cut, and then we either run with the first idea, and because we don't have enough option, or we pick on somebody like it, which is probably the worst criteria that you can use. So those being systematic about the diverge and the converge and how we do both of them and the timing from it, that's something that can help. And then the other thing is if you can switch people's mind to really have a prototyping attitude. So yeah, we tried 5 years ago, but maybe time has changed, but let's not, so give it a chance. And maybe, if we have a new product, let's send it to, it's actually a real example from when I worked years ago at Clorox. We have this product that didn't work. And then 3 or 4 years later, somebody say, what about this product? And they were like, well, management was like, we don't want to spend a lot of money on this. We're not sure. And I was like, I was in marketing research at the time. I'm like, why don't we make a somewhat similar product? We send it to 20 people in their home. And then we call them and everybody was so excited. It's like, okay, we have something. And that was cheap and easy way to kind of say yes or no. If it was,
that's a great way to do it.
Maybe we would, no. So things, prototyping small and get feedback is sometimes the way to overcome I felt we tried or whatever. And just based on the users and not our own internal knowledge. I mean, not that is not important, but at the end of the day, you're trying to sell or convince or, have people use something.
So that's a great point. So then when you have a team member who maybe is struggling with that, how do you bring them on board to really embrace that change or stepping into that, especially when they're high resistors, right? Because you see this a lot, and there's usually, that's their own internal fear that could this eliminate their job, or maybe it wasn't their idea, but how do you rally that team for change and get them excited about it?
So at the most basic level, and that's more like a tip, but I love to use Post-it note or virtual note on a whiteboard. So it's not like everybody can put the ideas, and they're kind of anonymous because you don't know who wrote them and put them there. And then you have, based on the criteria that you discussed, you have the team evaluate them based on how attractive, how feasible, can you meet our deadline, whatever it is. So now it becomes more objective, and it's not one person resisting. It becomes kind of a group decision. If that is, it's not always possible, if that's possible. Or if you have somebody that is resistant, but once again, if we agree on criteria, that kind of, the team agree on criteria, or even upper management give the criteria. They're like, okay, well, we are going to evaluate more objectively based on the criteria that were established, whether then we can't do this or whatever. And then the other piece is sometimes you have to go under the radar screen. So if you can, test something really low key. So you don't need a big budget because it's going to talk to 10 customers and we can do it with $2,000 and just let's do it. And then we have more information and then we communicate instead of saying, oh, this is the ideas. And then somebody say, well, we tried it before, and say, hey, you know what? We just had that discussion with 10 customers and everybody's excited. So then suddenly give new information.
Okay. Nice. Nice.
Because the
Well,
customer
I'm
is
going to harp on.
the objective person, ultimately.
Well, I love the example you shared about the Post-it notes because I think that's a really inclusive way to handle that, right? So it's not dismissive of anyone. It's a collective group that decides what Post-it note gets to stay on the board and which ones get delayed or thrown.
Or put a parking lot. Parking lot is a great place.
Yes, I love parking lots. I do that a lot myself when I'm in different training sessions because there's a lot of richness that comes from that, right?
Exactly.
And you don't want to miss that opportunity. Yeah. So I'm just thinking about groups that I've worked with in the past and that initial fear of change, because it's that uncertainty that you were talking about earlier, right? When it's ambiguous or there's not predictability, people tend to go inward and very much what's in it for me or how does this impact me? So maybe talk a little bit about that. Like what have some of your experiences been on helping to navigate that internal dialogue that teams might have?
Sometimes I really believe that something we don't talk enough is process
Mm.
and tools. And so it feels overwhelming when you have a task and you don't know how to tackle it. If you train with having a clear process for the team and some tools they can use for each part of the process, then instead of being this big, massive mountain, who'd like, okay, this is how you go to the first 100 feet. And this is go to go. So suddenly it becomes, and you can look at small pieces rather than the whole thing. And so for some people that really help them because now they get more into a more area, they're more confident because they know how to get to it.
Nice.
So and I really think that process, we all always focus on the outcome, but if the process is not clear or if people have different processes, because of where they're trained, where they're coming from, and then we're not talking the same language, then there's a lot of
that's
frustration.
huge.
So that's one thing I really believe is having a training or a share process and share simple tool for a team so they can know how we can actually move this from we don't know anything to let's go to define the problem, be sure we have the right one, come up with ideas, develop them, test them, prototype them, and finally, how are we going to implement it? So,
Nice.
yeah.
Love that. Love that. So everybody's favorite topic these days is AI.
Yes.
So what is or how is AI impacting your business? And, how are you embracing or resisting?
Well, I think it keeps changing. So what I'll say today might be really different in 6 months. So I just want to acknowledge that. I think that AI, if you look back to the process I described, AI is great. I give you options. So you try to understand the problem. In 5 minutes, you can do some back of the envelope market research, get a sense for your competitors, all of that. Same thing. If you have clear prompt, you can get a lot of ideas. Or AI can help you create concepts with beautiful visual and something that illustrates your ideas. So that's a lot of the diverge part of it. I personally think that you want to be careful when you converge and make decision, and that the decision should be human based. Because one, there's a lot of error and hallucination, and AI can come with a very convincing 20-page reason why you should do this. Doesn't mean it's correct. Two, I think some of the decision is a lot of, you have 20, 30 years of knowledge in your industry. There's something that AI doesn't have, and the human and some of the complexity is not fully embraced, specifically to your industry, your culture, how we do things, etc. So I think that it's still for human for us. And then I think one of the challenges is actually managing the team dynamic that is dealing with a lot of change because they're going to be using more AI and they might not know how to do it. And, we still have, and we'll have tension about your job and what's happening. So there's a lot to manage. So I think the human part is becoming even more important. Anything as human related to be able to manage more technology, a faster pace, change that is going crazy, and people being unstable because one, they don't know if they still have a job. Two, they don't fully know about the technology, and whatever they figure out today, the prompting is going to be different in 3 months, and there'll be new tool that comes, and etc. And it's just hard to keep up with technology, frankly.
Oh, yeah, it's so hard. And I totally agree with you. I think the human element is so important in every aspect of how we embrace or work with AI. I mean, because there's a lot of really positive usage of it, but we can never lose sight of the human element, because you're right, it doesn't take into consideration a lot of the complexities and doesn't understand the whole aspect of what's going on. Can focus on parts of it, but not necessarily every component of it. So totally agree with you.
Yeah, and there's a framework I use in my work, which is a job to be done. And so you look at the functional, and I think AI can help with the functional job to be done, but the
Mm-hmm.
emotional and the social. Us as human, are we feeling overwhelmed? Do we want more connection? And those can be really important in a business. And unless we really also understand that we still have human doing things, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. Exactly. So I'm watching our time here. So what keeps you up at night, Ellen? That's a
AI,
loaded question, I know, but
it's AI.
we want to hear.
It's really AI, and kind of exactly to the point is, I think there is a companies with technologists that are really excited about the technology. And I was at the TED conference recently, and it's kind of obvious you have men that are really excited about the technology and going really far about how we're going to take this to the stars and consciousness to the universe and all of that. And they are the biases in the system, because frankly, there's more men in AI than women these days, is, how do you take into and whatever the AI is trained on is also mainstream. So the bias are becoming bigger and bigger in the system.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we make this fair? How are we going to deal with people losing their job? Also, a lot of the talk, people were excited about the possibility for life and a well-being. But in the meantime, if you don't have a job and you can't feed your family and don't have a roof on your head, that is a challenge, and it's going to go so fast. That's a challenge. We've done changing technology and adapted over time, but this is so fast that there might be a time when a lot of, like, they read article that a lot of the middle management in tech is going laid off because
Yeah.
of AI, things like that, or entry-level position that used to be a training ground, but now because those jobs kind of are relatively basic, we don't need it. AI can do it. But if you're going to get this training first entry-level job, how are you going to the next level? So that's really,
Well, exactly.
yeah. And I have 3 kids, so I'm that keeps me up at night.
Yes, likewise, likewise. And that is a very real situation. I had a woman on the podcast about a year ago, and we were talking about that because she had created a robot to take on a lot of the hospitality roles. And I said to her, but those are entry-level jobs that our kids get, which helps them learn how to work in the working world. And, I think it's a real fine line of how we do that, right? And
Yes.
even from an academic perspective, that's all changing of how kids are learning and what they're learning. And so I think we do have to be very careful, because we're going to dumb down our society very much if we're not paying attention to that.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Ellen, where can people find you if they have questions, if they want to continue the conversation? What's the best way for them to reach out to you? And where can they find your book, Fire Up Innovation?
Okay. 3 questions. So to find me, LinkedIn is my main platform. So they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. They can also reach out to me through my website, www.fireupinnovation.com. There's actually, if you're interested in my book and you want to just check the first chapter, you can download it there. You can subscribe to my newsletter when I have a lot of information around innovation. And then my book is wherever you can buy books online. So the main retailers. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing with us, your journey through innovation. I know you've got a couple of decades working in this sphere of, really change management, innovation, how to make meaningful change. So thank you for the work you're doing and for coming on and sharing with us today.
And thank you for your question, and I love our discussion.
Likewise, likewise. Thank you so much. And audience, thank you for chiming in today. Thank you for being here. You heard Helene. It's Helene Cahen. If you have questions that maybe we didn't get to cover as it pertains to innovation, or you're interested in her book, you can connect with her on LinkedIn or go on to her website. That's at fireupinnovation.com, which is awesome. And from WIL Empowered, we have a free leadership quiz. If you visit our website, that's WILempowered.com. You can go on, take our free leadership quiz. It'll give you a lot of insight as to how you're showing up as a leader. So thank you everybody for chiming in today, and we'll see you on the next Women in Leadership Talk podcast. Take care. Thank you for joining us for WIL Talk, sponsored by Women in Leadership Empowered. To learn more about our programs, please visit www.wilempowered.com. We look forward to seeing you in our community.